Today I'm sharing my tips for the best vegan mashed potatoes, as well as my secret ingredient that'll take your mashed potatoes over the top. I've been making mashed potatoes for the holidays since I was 15 years old, so 17 years, more than half my life, so I've learned quite a bit along the way. If you're looking to impress your family and friends at the holiday table this year, including members who might be a little bit skeptical of vegan food, then these are the potatoes for you. They're light and fluffy, yet creamy and rich, and I promise you, no one's gonna miss the dairy. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do for this recipe is bring some vegan butter to room temperature, let it soften on the counter. If you want to speed up the process to soften the butter, you can cut it into really small pieces and it will soften more quickly. While the butter is softening, we'll get started on our potatoes. My first tip is about potato variety. I've made mashed potatoes with every potato possible, and what I've learned is that my favorite mashed potatoes use a combination of two potatoes. First, russet potatoes, and second, Yukon Gold potatoes, or a similar yellow potato. The reason I love both of these is because russet potatoes are high starch potatoes, so they're gonna make it really light and fluffy, which is what everyone loves about mashed potatoes, and they're really absorbent, so all the vegan butter, whatever you add to your potatoes, will get really well absorbed by these. But they're not that flavorful, they're kind of bland. So the Yukon Gold has a lot more of a deep potato flavor. They're medium starch potatoes, so they're not gonna be as fluffy and light, but they do get really creamy. Using both of these, you get fluffy and light, but also creamy and full of hearty potato flavor. First things first, you wanna make sure you wash these guys. Potatoes are like dirt bombs. They're so dirty, dirt discs, I guess. I like to first peel them, then I wash them under cold water, and that way, even if there's some dirt lurking underneath the surface, I make sure I get it. I like to cut the Yukon Golds into quarters and the russets into eighths since they're bigger, so they're roughly the same size, and cutting your potatoes means they take less time to cook on the stove. Place the potatoes in a saucepan with enough cold water to cover. It's important to use cold water because if you add potatoes to boiling water, they won't cook as evenly. All right, guys, this next tip is super important, so make sure you listen up. Salt your cooking water. Salt the cooking water that you cook your potatoes in. This is super important because salt makes everything taste better. When you are boiling a starch, when you add salt to the water, whether the starch is a potato or it's pasta, it enables the food to be infused with flavor, and you're not gonna get that depth of flavor if you just sprinkle salt on the mashed potatoes at the end. It's gonna taste a lot better if you salt your cooking water, so don't forget that step. Once the water is boiling, the potatoes should take about 15 to 20 minutes to cook. While the potatoes are cooking, it's time to get started on the other ingredients, including my secret ingredient, which is miso paste. We're going to use the miso paste to make miso butter. So these are going to be some miso butter mashed potatoes. A miso paste is made from fermented soybeans, so it's an incredible source of umami that's going to make these potatoes taste complex, rich, savory, all these really good things, and they're gonna take your mashed potatoes over the top. I take a few tablespoons of white miso paste, which is the mildest form of miso, and cream it into the softened butter. As long as your butter is soft, it should be really easy to do this with a fork, but you could use an electric mixer if you prefer. You'll add the miso butter to a small saucepan and warm it up. When it's almost melted, whisk in some light or reduced fat coconut milk. You don't want to bring it to a boil, but just make sure it's still warm when you add it to the potatoes. And if you're wondering whether the light coconut milk makes the mashed potatoes taste like coconut, it does not. The potatoes should be done cooking by now, and to test if they're done, insert a fork or a thin metal skewer into a potato. Make sure it's really tender, there should be no resistance, and it should be almost but not quite falling apart. And once your potatoes are cooked, you want to make sure you give them a little bit of time to dry out, because if you just drain the potatoes quickly and start mashing them, they're going to be kind of watery, and watery mashed potatoes are soggy and not very good. What I like to do is drain the potatoes in a colander and then add them back to the pot that they were cooking in, put it on low heat, and stir them around for a few minutes or shake the pan so that they don't stick, and this will remove the excess moisture. In all my many years of making mashed potatoes, I've tried every mashing method out there, a bunch of different potato mashers, an electric mixer, a food processor, but by far the best method is a ricer, one of these things right here. This makes for mashed potatoes that are so light and fluffy. There's really no comparison. You can find this particular ricer in the description box below. I really recommend getting one if you plan to make mashed potatoes. But whatever you do not use a food processor. It will make your mashed potatoes gummy and dense and disgusting. All right, now for my favorite part, time to mash the potatoes using the ricer. This is actually really fun, so if you have kids, this is a great way to get them involved. You basically just put the potatoes in here and then you push down. Let me show you how to do it. Just put some potatoes directly in there. Ugh, okay, my hands aren't this big, but look at that, how cool is that? Tell me what kid or adult wouldn't like that. Gently fold in the miso butter milk mixture using a wooden spoon or spatula. Miso paste is salty, so taste your potatoes before adding any more salt. I usually add just a little bit and a generous crack of black pepper. These mashed potatoes are so good as is, but if you want to make them even better, add some roasted garlic. I take a whole large head of garlic and peel the outer skin, then slice off a thin layer on the top to expose the skin of the cloves. Drizzle a bit of olive oil onto the exposed cloves and rub it in. Wrap the garlic head in parchment paper, followed by aluminum foil to make a packet, and roast it in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 40 to 45 minutes until it's soft, tender, and golden on top. Squeeze the roasted garlic cloves into the potatoes and mash them up using your preferred mashing method, and then add the miso butter milk mixture. All right, mashed potatoes are done, and now the only thing left to do is give them a taste. And since I'm the only one here, I have to be the taste tester, so it's a difficult job. Oh, they're fluffy, they're light. I do need a little bit of salt though. I think a little bit of salt at the end is super helpful because it brings out all the flavors. That final bit of salt, super useful. It rounds out the potato flavors, makes everything taste like it's supposed to be. They're creamy, they're fluffy, they're light, they're indulgent. All of the good things, best of both worlds. Now that you have mashed potatoes covered, here are some other Thanksgiving recipes for you to try this year. Hope you join me over there, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.